Good Sabbath to you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another edition of a few quality moments around the Shabbat table with the Rabbi's son. This is Phil Bullock, and thank you for letting me come into your Shabbat, your Sabbath day, your seventh day blessing, and down infusion of Kedusha energy that's coming into your life and into your home and into your family. Thank you for sharing that with me and letting me share that with you. Shabbat Shalom. May there be peace. May there be wellness, wholeness. May there be healing. May there be provision, protection all over you and everything that you touch. May you bring life, health, and peace to all those you know. Welcome, as I said, to another edition of our time together as we take this quest in search of knowing the creator of the universe, knowing the one who made us, knowing the reason perhaps that he put us on earth, what he thinks of us and what he sees in us and what he desires from us. This is our quest. We are sharing it together. Thank you for joining me on that. Today we are in the 26th parsha of our source material, which is the Torah. If we want to find out who the Holy One is, we need to read his book, and we didn't get to know him the way he designed us to get to know him. And so we find ourselves digging into the first letters that he wrote to us, the first words that were put up on the page, the Creator speak, the Creator text that introduces who he is and why we're here to us. And that is the Torah, and that begins with Genesis 1:1 and go through the end of Deuteronomy. But today we're focusing on something right close to the middle. Week number 26, Parshas, or subdivision, section 26, is called Shemini. It means eighth, but it's not the eighth Parsha, it's about the eighth day. Something happened on this very special day. And this has formed a part of our identity, part of our DNA memory, part of who we are, is something that happened on Shemini, on day 8. And this is the address in the Torah for these discussions, where we'll be taking them from is Leviticus chapter 9, verse 1 through chapter 11, verse 47. About 3 chapters, 9:1 through 11:47. Let's get ready, set, and go. The discussions that we're having are about this quest, and we find ourselves now at 26th Parsha, Shemini. We find ourselves knee deep in the third of 5 books of Torah. This book called Vayikra means "and he called," and this book is the heartbeat of our calling in the Holy One. It is not an outmoded book for laws of Levites that don't exist anymore, or for rules or regulations that don't apply anymore. We just have to find new ways. The deeper ways, the deep calling unto deep ways that are in the text and the downloads of this book. This book contains Creator speak at its maximum levels ever. And so he's teaching us things that our spirits can understand if our flesh and our pseudo-intellect do not get in the way. So instead of looking at this from the standpoint of saying, well, there is no tabernacle, which is where all the things that we talk about in the book of Leviticus or Vayikra take place, because there's no tabernacle, we might say, well, this is just irrelevant to us. This is all historical stuff that maybe a bunch of ceremonial laws that were another day, another era, another covenant, and that is where we would fall into great error, and we would miss so much. Because you see, the Messianic interpretation, the way of Yeshua interpreting Torah, is always, yes, you have Shema, you have heard this part, but let me tell you how much deeper it is. And that's the way he did in Matthew chapter 5 with the Lo Tirzah, you will not kill, as we think about what we've heard. And Lo Tanaf, you will not commit adultery, that we think we've heard, we think we know. He says, oh, let me tell you how deep it is. Let me give you the Messianic interpretation. Well, that's the way it is also. With the wisdom of this third book of Torah, Vayikra, there is a messianic revelation deep in it. Now, the issue is, if we're worried about literal interpretation and going to a literal tabernacle and putting forth literal bulls and goats and literal grain and seeing a literal priest take all these things, then we've locked ourselves into Pharisee speak, Pharisee thought. No, the idea is it's deeper than that. These are eternal truths. These are giving us wisdom from heaven that transcends situations and circumstances on earth. So therefore we must have to find a way in our devotional life, in our meditations, in our prayers, in our worship, and in our service to mankind and to the Holy One, in all these ways to incorporate the wisdom of the things that are being taught in the book of Leviticus. So, we are 10 parsha deep into this great experience, what I call the Sinai Revelation download. 10 parsha, 10 subdivisions of Torah into it. And we've been at Sinai basically for almost 10 months. And maybe almost 11 months. And so in our historical narrative, but this has become part of who we are. So these 10 parsha we've already experienced. And through those 10 parsha, through those 10 subdivisions, the Creator has been forming the seed of Abraham and the mixed multitude, binding them together, all those that fled Egyptian oppression, binding us into a great nation, making us, forming us into the great nation He promised to Abraham so many years ago. And that He said would become a blessing to every household, every family on the face of the earth. He's doing all that, and in so doing, He has redefined our identity, who we think we are, who we really are. He's shown us who He is, and in light of who He is, who we are, and who we could be. He's refocused all of our priorities in these 10 parshot. He's got us. We're preparing our hearts and our minds, and even our bodies and our conversations and our relationships in such a way that we can begin to play a part, an active role in His grand plan for the redemption of mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline, and household by household, and individual by individual, as many as will heed the call, and for restoring all of creation, every square meter, every square centimeter, hillside and valley, ocean and land mass, to its original intended state of beauty, fruitfulness, and shalom, the Edenic state. This is what we're called to do. Here at Sinai, He's forming us into a nation that will work with Him in this plan. And that has caused something to take place that is marvelous. The era of Emmanuel, of God with us. He has come to dwell on earth in a physical tabernacle. That's the story we're told. But He is, if you do not understand this, you can understand what Yeshua might have talked about. When He talked about, I will send the Spirit of truth behind me. There will be another one. There will be someone who dwells with you. The era of Emmanuel is on, and when the eternal God visited and tabernacle with men is what we're studying about. And we're thinking about how are we going to adjust to that. How are we, and in what ways are we, to let this incredible nearness, first in the tabernacle, then in Yeshua's physical body, then in the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, how can we let this incredible nearness change us, heal us, fix us, prepare us, and motivate and empower and inspire us to do what we're called to do? That's our quest. And so we are in days of Emmanuel, and these are days of greatly increased God consciousness. I hope that through our discussions around the Shabbat table, here with the Rabbi's son, as I've been come to be called, here in this cross, I hope you're getting an increased God consciousness, an awareness, an understanding of who God really is, and that He's not a figment of your imagination, that He's also not aloof and adrift, and it's just mysterious and impossible to find, but that He is engaged with His creation, He is engaged with you, and He wants to engage at a higher, deeper level. Do you have a greatly increased God consciousness? And if not, let's stay with this quest until we begin to develop that, and mature it, nurture it, and let it be functional. Not just a greatly increased God consciousness, though, is what we're after. We're also after a dramatically enhanced self-awareness, of understanding of who we are and why we're here, and what's been going wrong with our lives, and why our lives and our brothers' lives and our families' lives and our neighbors' lives and our enemies' lives are so broken, and what can be done about it. That's the essence of our quest. And the question on the table is, now that we have the Emmanuel initiative, now that God is dwelling and tabernacling with men, now that we have this incredible nearness and we're conscious of it and we're becoming aware of ourselves and our flaws in light of it, how can mortal men, steeped in folly from the womb, oozing toxicity through gaping holes in our souls that come from constant immersion in raw shakat and Hamas, or evil, corruption, and violence / cruelty. How can mortal men steeped in this stuff acclimate to the presence of the Holy One, the creator of the universe? How can we absorb and exude his beauty, his majesty, his holiness, his kedusha? How can we commune with him, converse with him? His intelligence level is off the charts compared to us. Our mind is dysfunctional. Our emotions are running rampant. Our pseudo-intellect is fighting with our real intellect. It's artificial intelligence trying to tell us things, and we take it from our culture, and we take it from our environment, we take it from our education systems, we take it from all religious systems and political systems. We take all this artificial intelligence and turn it into pseudo-intelligence, and then we don't know how to communicate with the Holy One anymore. How can we do this? How can mortal men overcome these things? And how can we offer reasonable service in this world to the eternal, immortal, invisible, all-wise, and all-good God who created us? Well, we're learning. We're working on this together, right? This is our quest. This week we focus on the third subsection of Leviticus, the third parsha of Leviticus. And this is a book that involves the Holy One having and taking center stage, full focus, be the center of everything. And if we're not that, then we don't understand this book, and this book will seem like it's too detailed, it's too high level, it's too esoteric. We'll think that if we're not taking at first glance, first understanding, basic foundation that the Holy One is the center of everything in our lives. Now, he has become the center stage of the camp of the redeemed in our storyline. He has established an earthly command center in the tabernacle structure, and that's what we're camping around. That's what we're pitching our tents around and facing every morning and every evening. As we go to bed, as we get up in the morning, these are the things we see. The tabernacle is with us. Emmanuel. The theme of this book is, now that you know who the Holy One is, and I hope we're learning, and know what it might be like if he was truly at the center of the stage of your life and your world. If that were the case, now that you know these things or could imagine them, how should it change you? Us. How should it change us? How should it change the way we think? How we emote? The tone and context and content of the words that we choose to speak to one another? How should it change the way we assign values to substances and people and circumstances and things? How should it change the way we assign priorities and make commitments or don't make commitments, or fulfill commitments or don't fulfill commitments? How should it change the way we behave? How should it change the way we interact with and impact the world? Well, the theme of this book, this center of gravity bullseye book of Torah, is be holy. Kedusha, be kedoshim, be flowers, be emitters, be traffickers, be vessels of kedusha, energy from heaven. For he says, for I am that. And if we are getting to be with him and have Emmanuel and flow with him, then we'll become what he is like. So it's not a matter of a command that we need to be more holy and put on more garments and do more things. This is about becoming more like him, absorbing his kedusha energy and flowing in it, and then becoming like him. Being the shadow that we were called to be in the original discussion of God with man. Let us create man as our own shadow upon the earth. Well, this week's sub-theme will flesh out this be holy as I am holy, for I am holy. You're becoming holy, become an exuder of Kedusha, because I am that. This theme will be fleshed out. And I'll use a subtitle, Kedusha, the air that we breathe. The air we inhale, the air we exhale as we live, begin to take up our lives in beauty realm fashion, in the beauty realm mindsets, and in our devotion lives, in our meditation lives, in our prayer lives, in our worship lives, in our service lives. As we do this, Kedusha becomes the air we breathe. Holiness becomes the air that we breathe. The Holy One's own holiness becomes the air that we breathe, and then we breathe it in, and then we breathe it out. And the words of Leviticus 10:3, one of the passages from this parsha, says, Moshe's telling Aaron, the Holy One has told us, by those who come near me, who approach me. That's us, right? That's going to be us. By those who come near, who approach me, I must be regarded as holy. That's the inhale part. You must see me, must draw and be drawn in by my holiness, and you must draw it into yourselves. Absorb it, seek it, long for it. Do we long for his holiness? By those who come near me, those who approach me, I must be regarded as holy. That's the inhale portion. But there's an exhale portion. And before all the people, this is after we inhale. We look at the people. We look at people differently. And we treat people differently. And we act in front of people differently. And we react to people differently. He says, before all the people, the Holy One speaking, I must be glorified. This is the exhaling portion of the breath of the Kedusha. There must be this sense of letting him be the weighty one, the powerful one, the one who has the impact. The impact becomes his, not ours. So where are we? Well, if we're in the shopping mall or the location on the square telling us where we are, you are here. We are at the segue between two long episodes, downloads of Creator Speak that make up this book. The first one was the Carbonate Discourse, the approach protocols. This is like the inhaling, how we learn to get this perspective of him and his holiness. The Carbonate Discourse, Leviticus 1 through 8. Approach protocols. That's the first download. And now we're going to have a brief interval, a segue that's going to introduce us to the next discourse, the longer one, the Kedusha discourse, the deployment protocol. So Carbonate Discourse is about approach protocols and drawing near and inhaling the Kedusha of God. And the Kedusha discourse is about the deployment protocols, the exhaling unto the world. Leviticus 10:8, it will start. We'll go all the way through Leviticus 24:9, the longest continuous download of Creator Speak in the entire Bible. As a matter of fact, in any Holy Writ, anywhere, the actual words of the Holy One, one after another, for basically 14 chapters. So what was this first discourse I talked about, the Carbonate Discourse about? Well, it seems that we now know the Holy One is near. And not only is he near, he wants to engage with us. So he has invited us to come into his presence. Alas, there's a problem with that because we're not ready and we're not capable and we're not holy enough. We're profane. So he knows we need directions and protocols of approach to get to where we need to go. So he gave us the Carbonate Discourse, the approach protocols, the way to inhale, the way to get our focus on him and make him become regarded as holy in our eyes. He left us through the Carbonate Discourse, the Olah discussions, the Mincha discussions, the discussions of the Shalom, the discussions of the Hatat, the discussions of the Asham, and for you who know the English but not that Hebrew phraseology yet, the burnt offering, the grain offering, the peace offering, the sin offering, and the trespass offering. Those are the ones I've just referred to: Olah, Mincha, Shalom, Hatat, and Asham. He gave us these approach protocols as a trail of breadcrumbs. He's the bread of life. He gives us these trail of breadcrumbs so we can come into his presence. Follow this trail of breadcrumbs, his approach protocols, into his presence. That's our quest. This presence is the place where we are invited to go where we want to go. It's the place where we begin to heal the 5 gaping fissures, the holes that have developed in our souls through exposure to Rosh, Hakat, and Hamas, evil, corruption, and violence or cruelty, and have led us to decades of wallowing in flesh obsession, the lust of the flesh it's called, to worldliness, lust of the eye, as it's called, and into pseudo-intellectual folly, which is the pride of life, as it's called. The trail of breadcrumbs leads us away from all those things into his presence. That is where we've come from. Where are we going? The Kedusha Discourse is where we're going next. But first, we have to understand why we need the Kedusha Discourse. The narrative of the 8th day explains to us why it is mankind needs the Kedusha Discourse. The protocols of learning how to glorify the Holy One, not degrade or curse or bring foulness into it. So, Parsha 26, Parsha Shemini, Leviticus 9:1 through 11:47. Emmanuel upgrade incoming. We have sequence. We have ignition. We have glory and fire. Let's sing our call to worship, and we'll get started in detail about what this great Kedusha discourse we're about to read is going to teach us and why we need it. Join me if you could, if you know it, and just close your eyes if you can and listen. Baruch Adonai Hamvorak. Baruch Adonai Hamvorak Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bakar Banu Mikol Ha'amin V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. And now would you open our eyes, O Holy One, our God, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah, for we are but strangers in this earth, so do not hide your commandments from us. Last week, Parshat Zav, the 25th Parsha, ended with the inauguration of the tabernacle era. No ordinary person has entered it yet. We haven't begun for the tabernacle to function. We're having an inauguration ceremony. 7 days of radical consecration. Only Moshe, Aharon, and his sons were in the tabernacle for those 7 days. That's just concluded. At the end of last week's Parsha, Moshe spoke to Aharon and his sons, and he said, you are not to go outside the door of the tent of meeting for 7 days. This is the first 7 days of Aviv, or Nisan, in the year of the time at Sinai. You are not to go outside the door of the tent of meeting for your 7 days, until the days of your consecration are ended. For 7 days he, the Holy One, will consecrate you, set you apart, as he has done this day. Even so, the Holy One has commanded you to do. Lechafer alechem, to cover, to provide this pitch covering that coats you inside and out, to cover you all. And Aaron and his sons, we're told later, Asad, they built everything that the words of the Holy One had been given to command by Moshe, by the hand of Moshe. And they did everything just for those 7 days. It was heaven on earth, as it is in heaven. And now the great reveal, now the grand opening. Now that soft opening is over and the grand opening is now ready. It's time for the people to come, for ordinary folks like you and me to come to the tabernacle and experience firsthand the tent maker's dream. The kingdom tent, the kingdom tabernacle is open for business at last. Well, before we jump in there, we're going to have to learn some valuable lessons about what this kind of experience, what this opportunity to be close to the Holy One and have this nearness with us is going to be, what the cost will be. So our theme as we enter the tent maker's dream operational season, approach the Holy One with appropriate reverence, please. This is not business as usual. This is not life as usual. This is higher level stuff. And this is beautiful but dangerous. Approach with appropriate reverence. Handle the holy things that you will see and smell and taste here with the utmost care. And then we could put in parentheses, always remember Nadav and Abihu. Well, see, we have been invited, you and me, every human being, into our King's heaven meets earth, and come spend some time with me place. I'll repeat that because I kind of like the phrasing. We've been invited into our King's heaven meets earth place, which is also his come be with me a while place. But we are going to have to learn some very serious corresponding pilgrim, stranger in this world responsibilities. We've got to learn to maintain some distinctions and yet not do so with animosity. Not to let arrogance set in. not take up a ton of condemnation, not enter into hypocrisy, and not to promote or act out divisiveness. Maintain distinctions, but not divisiveness. Maintain distinctions, but not have any malice or arrogance or condemnation or hypocrisy in those things. This is the challenge. Strangers in this world, responsibilities, pilgrim responsibilities, discernment and navigation of what the Holy One will introduce to us is the four realms. Learn how to walk the narrow road between the holy and the profane, between the clean and the unclean. You say, oh, those terms don't mean anything to me anymore. Oh, believe me, beloved, they mean everything to you. If you want to pursue this quest, you will find out these words are your navigational tools. Knowing what is holy, knowing what is kadosh, and knowing what is profane, knowing what is kol. Knowing and then living accordingly in this narrow pathway, being the guideline, the badal, the distinction line, the mark between tahor and tameh, which is clean and whole and balanced and healthy and healing and providing wellness, and that which is tameh, that which is decaying and disintegrating and causing fragmentation and destruction. Know these things, know all these things, and walk the narrow road, the fine path. So we will talk about this week the things that we'll cover or were covered in Parsha Shemini are the 8th day, the new beginnings at the higher level of personal involvement, not just witnessing or reading about or contemplating the idea of having the Holy One dwell with us on earth and invite us into his chambers, but actually beginning to learn the protocols to do it. So the first thing will be the grand opening, as we talked about, of the Mishkan, the opening for business of the Mishkan. Chapter 9, verses 1 through 23 will be this discussion. The second discussion will begin with verse 24 of chapter 9. One verse at the very end, holy fire and Eish Zerah. The second subdivision of this parsha is the short discussion between 9:24 and 10:7 of holy fire compared to Eish Zerah, or foreign fire, or strange fire, as I think it's regarded in the King James English. The idea of one is of the holy realm and one is of the common, profane, mundane realm of the nations that do not know the Holy One. This is the difference. We'll learn to walk this fine line of distinction and not get arrogant and not get proud and not get cruel and not get rude and not get judgmental, and yet to be good models and examples of that. So, after the grand opening of the Mishkan and the holy fire versus Eish fire comparison, the narrative ends and the Kedusha discourse begins. Chapter 10, verse 8 begins the teachings, and it will continue through chapter 24, verse 13. That's over 14, about 15 chapters worth of just plain creator speak, designed to help us to know how to walk this fine line between the holy fire on the one hand and the Eish Zerah, the ways of the nations, the ways of the human being, the ways of flesh, the ways of pseudo-intellect on the other hand. Okay, so in the Kedusha discourse, we'll talk about many things. First of all, let's talk about our mission to be these narrow road walkers, these realm travelers that learn how to navigate successfully between the realms of the clean and the unclean and the holy and the profane. Our mission, chapter 10, verse 9 and 10. And that is how we will learn how to teach people the ways of the Holy One, by walking these fine lines and keeping the distinctions not only in our mind but in our speech and in our behaviors. So this mission will be laid out. And then he will begin to teach us how to make the distinctions between these four realms and lay the foundation, teach the Torah, and confirm the Holy One's delight in those who wish to approach it. And then the second part of the Kedusha discourse, the one that's going to introduce the larger section of the Kedusha discourse, is what is and is not bride food. What can you eat that is consistent with your identity and your mission? What will have the same frequency and cause you to keep the same frequency as heaven? Because all things we might ingest have a frequency to them, and we want to keep that true tone of heaven. And there are foods, there are things we could stuff in our face and our mouths there are animals that we could eat that have other frequencies because they're for other purposes. They're of the Eish Zerah variety or style. Let's get then to the opening lines of Parsha Shemini. I'll read in Hebrew, and then I'll give you the best English translation I can off the spot. Vayehi bayom hashmini, and then on the 8th day, Kara Moshe la'aron ul banav ul zignei Israel. Moshe called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. You see this big assembly is taking place. We're being invited to the tabernacle for the first time to really see inside. Vayomer el Aaron, and he said to Aaron, Moshe did, Kach lecha ene ben bakar lechatat. Take a young bull for yourself as a chatat, as an approach, a protocol that would cover trespasses against the Torah. V'ayil ola tamim, make it as a ram. Take also a ram as an ola, as a English would say burnt offering, but it's about ascending, something that helps you ascend, something without blemish, tamamim. V'ha karev lifnei is Adonai. V'ha karev lifnei Adonai, and make an approach, draw very near to the Holy One. Now, this is what this is all about. This tabernacle is all about drawing near to the Holy One. And so here we have demonstration day. What's going to happen is that the priests are going to be called to put on a demonstration to the populace, to the millions that have gathered around the entrance to the tent of meeting. Some at the higher level, some at a lower level, but all being able to see, for somehow being able to see what they're doing. They're going to model for the people how these approaches are to be made. They'll make them themselves first, and then they'll make them on behalf of the people, and eventually the people will be invited to come themselves and do the same thing, using the priest, the Kohanim, as their guides, as their tour guides, or as their teachers in this regard. So the text continues. Vayomer el Aaron, and he, or Moshe, said to Aaron, I think I just read that one. Did I read that? Yeah. Va'el b'nei Israel tidaber lamor, and then he speak there to speak to b'nei Israel and say, Keku se'ir izim la'hatat. Take a kid of the goats for a hatat. Ve'egel ve'keves b'nei shana tamamim le'olah, and a calf, and a lamb of the first year without blemish for an olah. V'shor ve'alil l'shlamim lizbach livnei Israel. And also a bull and a ram for a shalom, for shalimim, plural, to slaughter before Adonai. V'mincha be'lula b'shamin, and a mincha mixed, covered with the oil. Ki hayam Adonai nira elekim, for today the Holy One will appear to you and manifest to you all. Let me repeat that again. Ki hayom Adonai nira elekim, for today the Holy One will appear to and manifest to you all. This is the closeness. This is the nearness we're seeking. Now, what were the protocols? He gave us 4. He said, I told the people to take these 4 things. A kid of goats for a hatat. This is the hatat protocol. A calf and a lamb of the first year without blemish for an olah. This is the olah protocol. A bull and a ram for shlamim, for the peace offerings or the shalom offerings. Slaughter, and a mincha mixed with oil. The mincha protocol. These 4 protocols will be modeled for us to show us the things that need to be laid aside, put away, and how to walk this fine line that goes into his presence. Follow the breadcrumb trail. For the Holy One, he says, today will appear and manifest to you all. And it goes on. Vayiku et asher ziva Moshe. So they brought, this is the people, all of us, brought what Moshe instructed them to bring. Savad, enjoined them to bring. El paneh ohel moed, and before the tent of meeting. V'yikrevu kol ha'edah, and all the witness throng, all the people approached. Ve'amdu lifnei Adonai, and stood before the Holy One's face, before his magnificent and manifest presence. Vayomer Moshe zeh hadavar, and Moshe said, this is the word. This is the Debar. Asher Sava Adonai Ta'asu. This is what the Holy One told you, instructed you to build and to make happen. Vayera Aleichem Kavod Adonai. And the glory of the Holy One, Kavod Adonai, will appear to you. Ah, do you hear it? The Holy One's glory will appear. Yes, He will manifest Himself. His glory will appear if we follow the protocols, if we walk the narrow way between the realms, if we learn how to realm travel responsibly, if we learn how to absorb Kedusha energy and not become arrogant and proud and pseudo-intellectually wanting to dispute everybody and judge everybody and condemn everybody. If we maintain our shalom, this is our key. There will be two witnesses of this. Two witnesses of this higher level. The two witnesses, everything's got two witnesses, right? By the mouth of two or three witnesses, a matter shall arise and be established as a standard. Yakom Dabar, Deuteronomy 19:15. This is the standard of the kingdom. By the mouth of two or three witnesses, testimonies, Yakom Dabar, a matter shall arise and be established as a standard. Well, we're going to have two witnesses to this higher level. The one is HaKavod, the glory. And the second one is Ha'ish, the fire. These two witnesses will testify that we have stepped into the pathway of the right approach. If you want to see this two witnesses that go forward in this parsha, you'll see it when we start talking about things that are food, animals that are or are not food. He begins to give us two witnesses, two signs for each of the kinds of things that we are to eat and we are not to eat. The two signs for the walking animals or the mammals are parted hoofs and chewed cud. Two signs. Must both be there. Two or more witnesses. With regard to sea creatures, fins and scales, both must be there. And that's the two witnesses that say this is the way. And for insects, if we wanted to go on insect way, and I know they're trying to push that on us these days, but if we wanted to, then we would have the issue of jointed legs in flight, the two signs, the two witnesses. They must be flying insects. They must have jointed legs like grasshoppers and locusts and those sorts of things. And if you want to go all the way through the teachings of Yeshua into the teachings of his disciples, he takes two more signs, the same two signs basically, Beruach, Be'emet, and spirit. And truth, or true tone, identity. Two witnesses. So let's go to the first sign of this new era we're in, HaKavod Adonai, the glory of the Holy One. What does glory mean? Kavod means weight, impact, effect. That which causes accountability awareness. You know when you're going to be accountable. You know someone is big in the room. Someone's here. It's like the Holy One would say to us, I'm right here. I'm in the room with you. You need to behave accordingly. This is weight, impact, and effect. Kavod Adonai. It's not some mysterious thing. It's the way he manifests in presence in a way that helps us know he's here and we need to be responsible. But where have we heard this term, Kavod Adonai, or the glory of the Holy One, the glory of the Lord? Where have we heard this or seen this in Torah before? This is always the question that we ask. Where have we seen this before? Well, let's go back to Exodus 16:7. That was in the Bamidbar of the desert of Sin, the episode where people were complaining about the manna. It didn't have any taste, or it was just the same every day. And Moshe writes, behold, HaKavod Adonai appeared in the cloud. This is the first witness. HaKavod Adonai appeared in the cloud, and the Holy One spoke to Moshe. Then the words came. That were the second witness in that situation. The words came. The Holy One spoke to Moshe, saying, I've heard the complaints of Bnei Israel. So speak to them, saying, at twilight you will eat meat. And in the morning you will be filled with bread. Another two signs. At twilight you will eat meat. In the morning you will be filled with bread, and you will know. You will have accountability awareness. You will know that I am Adonai, your God. And there are other places, Exodus 24:16 and 17. Then again, of course, when the tabernacle was filled, Exodus 40, 30 through 45, 34 through 35. And then there will also be told in Numbers 14:21 that the Holy One will declare all the earth will be filled with the knowledge of Kavod Adonai, of the glory of the Holy One. Do you have the first witness? Do you understand his weight, his impact? Is he the most important person? Is his opinion the most valuable to you? Is his plan and his agenda the most important to you? This is accountability awareness. This is Hakavod Adonai. And he will manifest in such a way that he will get our attention in that regard. The second witness was Esh Kodesh, holy fire, divine fire. Where have we seen this before? You could go all the way back to Genesis 3:24, and the cherub at the edge of the Garden of Eden, guarding the way to the tree of life with the flame on his sword, a flaming sword. Go to Exodus 15:17. Actually, Genesis 15:17, I should say. Go back to that place. And this Avrahamic covenant, it came to pass when the sun went down and it was dark. Abraham is preparing all these things for the Holy One, waiting to make covenant with him. And the Holy One, behold, a smoking furnace, we're told. And an Esh Lapid, a torch of fire, passed between the pieces. Now, how do you see the importance of the second witness of Esh Kodesh, the second witness? And you can also see Moshe's experience in Exodus 3:2, Moshe's burning bush revelation calling. The angel of the Holy One appeared to him, Moshe, in a flame of fire, of Esh, out of the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with Esh, with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Now we get this idea of the two witnesses, the Kavod Adonai and the Esh Kodesh. Well, in this week's studies, in Parsha Shemini, Bnei Israel and mixed multitude are called to the entrance of the Mishkan on the 8th day of Nisan or Aviv, just a few days before the anniversary of the Passover, to inaugurate the Mishkan. And in that time, the glory of the Holy One and Esh Kodesh, the holy fire, will be revealed. Two witnesses to every man, woman, and child. This will be how the tabernacle season is inaugurated. And we will have some things happen. The Aaronic blessing will be spoken over for the first time. May the Holy One bless you, keep you, make his face shine upon you, be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you, and may he give you shalom. This is an element of the meditations, an element of the devotion and the service of the tabernacle. And then the Nadav and Abihu, Moshe's, or Aaron's two young eldest sons, Moshe's two eldest nephews, will veer off from the king's court protocols that we have been taught so painstakingly and carefully in the Korbanot discourse. And they will, for some reason, try to approach the Holy One's presence with Esh Zarah, foreign fire, the way the nations of Egypt and wherever the other nations do things with regard to trying to worship their gods. They'll try to do it their way. And it will not work well, because this is beautiful territory, but it's dangerous territory. They will perish before our eyes. Now, that's the story we'll get into. That's the story that will awaken us to what we're called to do, what we're going to talk about for weeks now in the Korbanot and the Kiddush discourse. But think, if you saw what just happened to Nadav and Abihu, if you keep that in your mind, how would you, how will you, how could you, how should you respond? How should it change the way you do life? This is the question before us. Nadav and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his fire pan, we're told, in hand, and he built a fire in it. But let's talk about the situation that existed before he did that. Before, what led to that? What was the lead up? Well, it says that the glory of the Holy One appeared to all the people. This is chapter 9, verse 23 probably. Then the glory of the Holy One, Kavod Adonai, appeared to all the people just as Moshe had promised. And fire, Esh Kadosh, came out from before the Holy One. And that fire came out from before the Holy One. There's a connection made. We have contact. We have ignition. Well, yes, here we go. And that fire ignited and it consumed the olah, the approach protocols on the altar and the fat there. And when the people saw it, they, in English says, shouted for joy. That's interesting. Ranan is the Hebrew word, resh nun, not nun sofi, to trill, to alternate major and minor, to sound, and it's almost like an ecstatic kind of speech. They had this ecstatic kind of speech come out of their innermost being, and they fell on their faces, two signs that they had responded to the glory of the Holy One. They had Ranan, ecstatic speech, and they fell on their faces. And that's when we find out that for some reason, two guys got up. Nadab and Abihu got up, and they each took a fire pan, which was not designed for this purpose. It was designed to move coals from the main altar to the altar of incense inside the tabernacle, but all in front of the main altar. They take a fire pan in hand, and they build their own fire on it, not the fire that just fell from heaven. And they put incense on that fire. Where did they see this? Where did they get this? What were they thinking? And then they make with Esh Zerah, they try to approach and draw near the Holy One's face. Well, it didn't work well. The Holy One didn't strike them dead intentionally. They just got into the zone of fire. As we said, the fire had come forth from the presence of the Holy One, and it consumed the things on the altar. Well, they get into the realm. It's like they stuck their finger into a wall socket. The electric company didn't kill them. They did. They got in the wrong place in the wrong outflow of power. So they were consumed. So fire went out from the Holy One, it says. It wasn't sent out from him. It escaped or went out, yatzad, from him, not shalakt from him. And it devoured them, and they died before the Holy One. Well, this should get our attention. This is going to be the catalyst for the entire Kedusha discourse for the next 15 chapters. All the things the Holy One's going to say are tied back to helping us to know how to deal with this situation of the Esh Zerah approach, which we are never to make. If we're going to be close and have this nearness to the Creator of the universe, if we're going to learn who He is and why He's here and what He wants from us, if our desires are going to be molded into His wills, then we must do it His way. And Moshe said to Aaron when this happened, "This is what the Holy One spoke, saying, by those who come near me, I must be regarded as kadosh, as holy. And before all the people, I must be glorified." Remember, I told you about what was to inhale, I must be regarded as holy. And before all the people, I must be glorified, is to exhale. And then after Moshe said these words to Aaron, he spoke these words from the Holy One directly into Aaron's ears. Vayidom Aaron. And Aaron was dumbfounded, in shock, unable to speak. Those who know the Brit Hadashah, the apostolic scriptures, might refer this back or think in their mind Luke 1:20, Zechariah's state after Gabriel visited and said he would have a son, his wife would have a son, and Zechariah was struck dumb. Well, that's the event. Aaron is unable to speak, struck dumb, as he was dumbfounded by what just happened. We are all in shock. We're all in amazement. We were having such an ecstatic time. We saw the two signs were upon us. We fell on our faces. We saw the fire. We saw the glory. What do we do? How do we not repeat that problem, the mistake? We'll cue up the Kedusha discourse. Leviticus 10:8 through Leviticus 24:9. The protocols of abiding in and carrying the presence of the Creator of the universe. The Holy One's operational manual as to how to walk in the spirit and breath empowerment, and to walk in tov, goodness, to walk in the light of His countenance, and thereby to overcome and help other people overcome the flesh, and the pseudo-intellect, and the raw, the narcissism, and all the seductions of this world's darkness. So He's going to teach us over the Kedusha discourse. He's going to teach us two-sign witness methodology implementation, how to implement the two-sign, two-witness, two testimonies methodology. Leviticus 10:3, those who come near me must be holy and must, before holy people, glorify me. These are the two signs. And then also activate the four-realm navigational system. We have a GPS that's supposed to design us to take the narrow road between the four realms that cause the problems to develop in the world. We're supposed to be counterbalancing perfectly and offsetting so that the world continues in its operation, continues to spin, continues to do what it does. But if one gets out of kilter, we don't walk this pathway, this narrow pathway, then one encroaches on another. The four realms, what are the four realms? Oh, this is from Leviticus 10:10. You must distinguish, is the English words. Badal in Hebrew. You must get and maintain this narrow road distinction between the holy and the unholy, between, that is, kadosh and the kol, and between the unclean and the clean, it says in English, between the tameh and the tahor. You must get and maintain this distinction. You must walk this narrow line, narrow road between the holy and the unholy realms, between the clean and the unclean realms, if you're going to teach B'nai Israel my statutes. And I'll hint to you, looking toward chapter 11, this is all going to start. It will not end, but it will start, as it did in Eden, with food. What will we consider to be food? Well, two realms, two witnesses are required. Ecosystem Management 101 says everything must be in its proper place. The Creator is an ecosystem manager. The earth is his ecosystem as well as the rest of creation. But we have been given co-laboring responsibilities here on the earth. And the key factor is we need to know what everything's proper place is. And we need to maintain everything in its proper. We need to recognize the differences between things, why they were made, how the territories they were put into, and that they are able to thrive in and not thrive in. And learn how not to mix things that don't need to be mixed, how to keep his design, his Elohim signature design, operative in the ecosystem of earth, to recognize differences, to maintain boundaries, to keep everything in its proper place, to walk this narrow road that draws things back into order as opposed to sending them off into chaos. Well, let's see. The world today, in the Western world, we know the same kind of concept, right? We understand that we do counterbalancing realms, good and bad. It's right and wrong, moral and immoral, just and unjust, fair and unfair. We have these dichotomies. This is pseudo-intellectual. Of course, it doesn't have any real meaning to it. We just assign meanings according to our own philosophy of life. They don't really mean anything. These English words don't. Good and bad, right and wrong, moral and immoral, just and immoral. They just change with the tides or with the seasons or with the environments. These are not real words. These are just English pseudo-intellectual thoughts. But the Hebrew is different. The Hebrew model is the difference between or and chosek, light, and darkness. The difference between bracha and kalala, blessing, and cursing or diminution. The difference between shalom and daragah, between peace and wellness and wholeness and anxiety, fear and dread. We see how the impact of these things is different. It's not theoretical, theological, or philosophical, or ideological. It's not that. This is how much impact it has on whether it draws the world into wholeness and order and proper operation, or whether it takes a difference. So, let's continue with some of these counterbalances. After shalom and deragah, there's tov and ra, not good and evil. This is that which is bringing forth, refreshing and renewing life, and that which is narcissistic and causing retreating and division in between self-interest. Then we have tamam and shakat. We have the whole, that which is becoming more and more full and rich and mature and nurtured. And then there's shakat, the counterbalancing realm of that which just corrupts and beginning to die, bringing death into the realm. We have tahora and tuma. Tahora is that which is bringing things into their full functionality, and tuma is that which is causing dysfunction and sabotage. That's cleanness and uncleanness, if you didn't know. And then kedusha and kol, the holiness energy of heaven that fuels the four living creatures, the 24 elders, and all the activities and all the songs and all the movements and all the willing brilliance of heaven. That's kedusha. And then there's that thing which men do here on the earth: ideologies, philosophies, politics, emotional fits and fumings, rantings and ravings. Cool. That's the difference between that which we need to know how to distinguish, know the difference between these realms, and know how then to keep walking in such a way that we bring about fullness and wholeness in the world through not engaging with the negative side of these things. Well, it's time for me to leave you. I hope we had a good discussion. We'll be having many more discussions about the Kedusha discourse in its essence. I hope you understand that everything about our lives now has to change. It should change, because we are called to a higher level of accountability, a higher level of impact in the world. To do that, we need to do it his way. Oh, beloved, let's don't get into Eish Zerah, the ways of the foreigner, the ways of the nations, the ways of the flesh, the ways of the pseudo-intellect, the ways of folly, the ways of vanity. Blessings to you. Let me a note. Let me know where you're from, what you're doing, what's going on in your life, and what I can pray with you about, or what questions I might be able to answer. Shabbat shalom, and I'll see you next time.